What's up, LEGO builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios for the most anticipated update of building Coruscant, because I am finally officially starting the Galactic Senate building. This week I need to hammer out a solid game plan and figure out what specific parts of the Senate building I will be including, how big it's going to be, and how exactly I'm going to build a round building with a round roof. Every LEGO builder's favorite project, right? I also have some lighter side builds to work on, so there's going to be a little bit of everything to enjoy this week. All that being said, don't forget to execute order 66 on that like button, and let's get building. To kick things off, I'm doing a building random things montage. There are lots of little builds that need to be finished up, like building the rest of this crater in the road. I need to pull up part of the road and replace it with slopes to create a somewhat circular shape of destruction to mirror what happened on the sidewalk. I'm also adding more of the black frame, tiling off the pop-up that's on top of the apartment complex, and fixing the step on the Senate tunnel roof. I wanted to get a bunch of this knocked out first because the rest of the episode will be focused solely on the Senate building. I have all the pieces in and started the design, so now it's time to build the actual structure and figure out where exactly it's going. I also need to get the rest of the stairs in the entertainment complex done so I can finish the rest of it and not have to look at this section again until the finale. Nothing like starting out the week with a building random things montage, but I'm glad I did that because I was able to get a lot of just smaller things knocked out and I can stop thinking about them and I can put more focus onto the Senate building, which we'll talk about in a second. But first, progress check. I got that crater finished. I just threw in a bunch of random loose slopes, cheese slopes, plates, and tiles in there to act as debris and rubble in the crater hole, and then I also added some white parts to represent that broken up line that continues off in that direction. Overall, I think it looks really cool. I wasn't sure what kind of a shape I wanted to go for, but I'm pretty pleased with this circular looking one. There are a couple things you can nitpick if you get real close, but for the most part, we'll only see it as a distance like this, and there'll be more rubble and stuff around the outside by the time the mock is actually finished. But I'm excited to have this done because that means I only have one more battle damage section of the road to build. That's going to be right here, this trail of destruction left by that crashed gunship, and hopefully I can start working on that soon. Actually, I take that back. There are two sections. I'm going to have to do something with that over there. I just barely noticed that again. I was able to get a lot more of the frame done than I thought I would have parts for. I just have this little section here at the back, and I'm obviously not going to do anything on the back wall there. This whole front side is done, which means, other than what I just showed you over there, I only have this little section, well, it's not so little, but this section over here on this side of the mock. So I'm really glad to have that mostly done because I felt like this could be one of those things that really sneaks up on me and I forget about until the last couple of weeks, and then I'm scrambling to get black parts and tiles in to be able to finish it. And then over here I got the rest of the steps in, which meant I was able to get the rest of the second floor in and then subsequently start building that wall. Just, so much was just hinging on these stairs being done. So I'm glad I got that done. And I got the step thing on top of the tunnel finished. It's much bigger now and just looks much better. It was almost like a big person wearing a tiny hat, but I feel like it proportions better. Although I do feel like it's a little short and could come out further this direction. So I may play with that a little bit, but it's pretty much done for now. And that's everything I wanted to update you guys with progress-wise. Now it's time to focus the rest of the update on the Senate building. I got a bunch more plates put in last Friday's live stream. It was a blast. Thank you for those who tuned in. And now all I have is this little section. And I got really lucky and finished taking apart that Imperial Endor mock. And between that and the extra 16 by 16 plates I have just enough to finish off this section. I was worried I'd have to buy some more of these, but I have exactly enough, and I've got everything over here ready for that time lapse to start plating this off so I can start working on the Senate building. And speaking of the Senate building, I think it's high time I finally showed you guys what exactly this is going to look like, what my design is for this, what my vision is behind it, and like how exactly I'm going to go about capturing such a massive building.
Before I show the design I've come up with and the parts I got for it, I want to talk for a bit about the Senate building and discuss my overall plan and vision, because you've all known it's going to be the centerpiece of the mock from the beginning, but I haven't really gotten into the details of what exactly I will be building, what it's going to look like, and how I'm going to change it to fit in this mock. And the main reason for that is I just haven't really known myself, so this will be good for both of us. So these are some of the reference material images I've been using for Coruscant throughout the mock. You can see where I got the idea for the statues and then the steps and plateaus and other things, but we're going to be focusing on the building today, the actual structure, and you can see it's absolutely massive. So a couple of things I want to be careful of is not making it too big to where I can't satisfactorily finish it by the end of the series, and not turning it into a mock series of its own. Like this thing, you know, it should match the rest of the mock as far as detail and scaling and size, and you can see I can't make this anywhere near the correct scale just because I don't have the parts, the space, or just like the structural engineering that would need to go into being able to support this big of a roof that hangs out this far over the mock would be, you know, I'd need months and thousands of dollars for that. But what we're going to be focusing on down here, the base, because this is where I'm going to be building. So you can see there's openings along the entire bottom. It doesn't even really look like doors, just openings to walk in. So I think I'm probably going to include 3 of these in the mock, and then I'm just going to build walls straight up like that. I don't know how many of these details I'm going to include because frankly I don't really know how to put this stuff into a circular build, but we'll talk about that in a second. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about as far as the structure goes is the roof. I'm trying to decide if I should include the roof or not because I don't know how I'm going to build it. I don't know how many pieces it's going to take, and I don't know how I'm going to support it. So I was thinking about maybe building just a flat wall. The issue with that is it would look lame, let's be honest. That wouldn't look very cool, and it would be a lot harder to tell what exactly it is. So I might, try maybe making the roof a lot simpler than it actually is. I'll definitely lower it down, maybe just build this section right here and then put the roof on top of that, so I won't include any like these windows or balconies. There are a few cosmetic changes I want to make to mine to make it just a little different, and some things I thought would look cool. So there's no pillars here at the entrance, but I just thought it would look kind of cool to have these tall pillars going up from the floor to the roof, just grand, help with that grand imposing nature. And this would also work double as a support to help keep the roof up, so I wouldn't need to rely so much on the actual structure to hold it up. So I might ring the entire outside with pillars. I'd be interested to know what you guys would think. I honestly think that just seems like a given. Like, you've got a big giant building, might as well throw some pillars in there. But that's pretty much my goal and vision for this mock. I'm basically just going to be building this front side, an open facade, so there's going to be no interior, no balconies or anything like that, just basically a wall. But it should still be pretty grand and imposing paired with this whole plaza area. Now it's time to show you guys what exactly I've been building.
So I'm going to have my Senate building start here at the very back of the mock, and then it's basically going to wrap its way around like this, and there'll be a big flat portion right here along the center of these steps, and then over there towards the edge of the mock it'll curve back around, so it won't be a complete circle. I'm doing more of like an oval build for 2 reasons. The first being it'll be much easier to put doorways and openings in a flat section than a curved one. It'll also be much tougher to build an arched opening like that that's also, curving this way. And then the second reason is if I did it a complete circle, it would basically run all the way up to the edge of the steps in order to be able to curve back around that way and complete a more circular build, if that makes sense. So this flat section right here will take a lot of that curve out of the way and still give people space to walk up onto this plateau and room for minifigures and stuff. But speaking of circular builds, let's talk about how exactly I'm going to go about doing that, because as you guys know, Lego is all about squares and right angles and blocks, not so much curves and circles. So I've got a couple of designs right here. These may look familiar to you guys. I used this technique on my castle mock over on Coconut's Kingdom to help give me some kind of curved, rounded towers. And then I'm pretty sure this is what David's using, Solid Brick Studios, for his Geonosis mock. He's building that giant dam with all the guns on it. He's got a bunch of cylinders intermixed with 1x brick that allow you to, curve these bricks basically as much as you want, so you can create a much smoother, sharper curve than you can with this one, because this is going to have all of these flat sections. But I don't really like the look of this with all of the intermixed cylinders. It kind of breaks up the wall, makes it look kind of weird. So this one looks a little bit more realistic, and I want to note these will be the same color as the brick, so this will be one solid color. And where I'm doing kind of a shallower slope and then a large flat area, I don't need to worry so much about having a sharp curve, which means something like this, would still work pretty well, even with all of the flat sections. But I am curious to know, which of these two options do you guys think would better capture the Senate building and just look better overall? I'm sure this is a lot to take in. I really hope I made sense. I'm not going to try and over-explain what I'm doing with the Senate building. It's honestly just going to be best for you guys to just see it come together, and then you'll understand what my plan is as the weeks will go by. And I honestly don't know myself, so there's still a lot of experimenting to do. But before I get back to building, I've got some hauls for you guys. So this is all of the parts I need to officially start the Senate building structure. And I'm not going to lie, there's kind of a weird haul. I bought like 700 1x3 bricks and then a ton of these rounded 1x2s because these are going to be needed on the bottom of either technique to allow me to get that curved base that can still, connect to the floor. This one definitely uses up less though, so I am kind of leaning in favor of this one, but I do really like the more realistic curve this one gives. And then to go with all of those 1x3 bricks, I've got, I think it's like 700 of these dark bluish gray round cylinders. I'm definitely going to need more, but I figured this would be enough to at least start the general shape of the Senate building. And then to cover up all this exposed filler plate, I needed a lot of tile. And I decided the best, most efficient way to go about tiling it off would be buying a ridiculous amount of these 6x6 tiles. They are more expensive than the 2x4 tiles, but I did the math and it was more expensive to fill up this same amount of space with the 2x4 tiles than it was these bigger ones. So I went ahead and bought 125 of these, which should hopefully make a big dent in covering up all of this ground. This week was so tiring. I feel like I haven't done this much planning and designing since the first couple of updates, but the Senate building is basically a whole new mock in and of itself, so there was a lot to figure out. It's nice to take a little bit of a break from all the intensity and just do something simple like putting down some plate on top of brick pillars. There's no way I could mess up something as simple as that, right? So I just got done finishing those plates as you guys saw, and there's just something I ran into that I had to show you guys. At this point, I can't do anything but laugh, so you saw earlier, I started both of these halves separately. I built this chunk over here, and then I built this chunk over here. And I went to connect the two areas, and check this out. This whole side is shorter than this side. And I know why. It's because I was basing the top of this with the top of here, which, as you can see, the top of here isn't finished. I don't know where the final height of these steps is because there's no steps here. So I was an idiot. I was building this on stream, so I wasn't really paying attention to that. Half my brain was on chat, half my brain was here. I just started putting down the plates. That's literally the exact same thing that happened with these steps, building them separately instead of all at once. Just once again, I thought I had learned my lesson, but it's not going to be too big of a fix. I just got to add one more brick on all those pillars, and then we'll be back at it. Okay, so what I've been doing is trying to figure out how curved I want this corner to be, because this whole section is going to be flat. That's going to be easy, but this wall, where it sits, is going to be dictated by how curved these corners are. And so the sharper the curve is in this wall, kind of like this, there's going to be more open space out here because this curve is taking up less space. But if I make this curve less pronounced and more shallow like that, you can see it ends here instead of back here, and then leaves me less space in the front here for, people to walk in and out, and pillars, and you just don't want the building to be too close to the steps. So that's kind of where I'm at right now with here. And just overall, I think the biggest thing for me is just making a curve that looks good, that isn't too sharp or isn't too shallow. And another thing I've been trying to decide is which of these two designs to go with for the wall. As far as which one of these designs I'm going to go with, I think I've landed on this one just because it looks more realistic. Like, this looks like a wall design or build that you would actually see in real life or in the Star Wars galaxy, whereas this one, it's just kind of hard to figure out like what exactly it would be. I guess you could maybe say a brick wall, but you don't really see brick walls with rounded cylinders like this. Honestly, it reminds me the most of like a giant drink wall or something, whereas this one over here has these solid sections with these tall, kind of fancy looking pillars in between. So it almost adds to that overall grand, ornate, imposing look that I'm trying to go for with the Galactic Senate building. So you'll have these smaller pillars in the walls, and then you'll have these larger ones lining the outside of the building. But the only downside to that is I bought a bunch of 1x3 bricks in order to do this design, and all of these and these little sections are 4 studs long, so I'm gonna have to buy a ton of 1x bricks to go with all of these. But you know, at the end of the day, if that's what I need to do, that's what I'm gonna do. I don't want to sacrifice design and look in order to save myself money on parts in this case.
Finally, all the talking and designing is done, and it's time to get back to building. I'm both excited and nervous to start this. Even though we just had a big planning and prepping session, I still don't know what exactly the Senate building is going to look like, but the good news is the sooner I start, the sooner I will be able to figure it all out. I need to start by tiling underneath the curve of the wall. Once that's done, it's time to throw down some brick and build the wall design that I decided on, the one that I was showing you earlier. Who knew the castle built from Coconut's Kingdom would come in handy for Coruscant? It's been slow going, but I finally have the first iteration of the Senate building mostly designed and placed on the mock, and now it's time to get some serious building done. We talked about the doors to the Senate building earlier and how it looked like they were just a bunch of giant openings around the base of the structure. Kind of weird, but that's what I'm going with. I'm going to have 3 doorways, one in the very center with one on either side, and for now the rest of the wall is just going to be solid brick, unless I can think of some designs or support pillars to add. I built a light bluish gray frame in front of each of the openings to help them look more complete and detailed.
Let's check out the fruits of my labor. Oh man, the Senate building is going to be massive. I knew this was something that was just so immense I wouldn't really be able to picture it until I started building, but now that I can see this corner in and a lot of the front, I'm just blown away and very intimidated with what lies ahead of me. I think I got a really good angle in for the wall. Kind of like I was talking about earlier, there wasn't really any set angle that I needed to hit. I just needed to have enough space over here and have this look good, because I didn't want to have this tiny little curve, and then when you'd picture the whole build, it would be these 4 flat sides with these little curves in between. You know, I wanted to represent as much of that circular curve of the Senate building as I could. Moving over here to the front, there really isn't a whole lot on these walls, and I don't really know what to put. There are some large like structural support pillars that run along the walls down to the ground. Maybe I could add those, but even that's not going to add a whole lot of detail. I'm really pleased with how these light bluish gray frames turned out. You can see they don't mirror the shape of the opening exactly. They rise up a little bit higher here. I like that. It just made the tunnel opening look a little bit deeper and a little bit fancier. Oh, I forgot, there are two more things I want to mention. The first is I'm actually really happy there are multiple openings to get into the Senate building, because it helps these stairs make more sense. If you guys remember a couple of months ago, I was kind of bemoaning the fact that it felt like these stairs were kind of unnecessary because they were tucked away behind the bank. It was a little bit harder to get to them. And then it just felt like it was very secluded from the rest of the mock, because right here on this side you've got this archway leading from the entertainment complex, which pops you right out onto these steps. So now this makes a whole lot more sense, because instead of everyone congesting in this one middle opening, you can funnel people off to that one, or come over here up these steps and funnel people over here. So it just makes this whole side a little bit more practical, which makes me happy. Another reason I wanted to make this whole front section flat instead of having this entire thing be round and curved is it's going to be much easier to build a roof with a large flat section and then a much smaller curved section, because now most of the roof is going to be flat and easy to build and connect things to. That's everything for this week. This was a very exhausting but rewarding update, and let's figure out what's going down next week. These Coruscant updates are getting intense. This was the longest one I've ever done, at almost 20 minutes, and I used to have this set structure for how long I would spend working on one of these Coruscant updates, basically what I'd work on each day, how many days it'd take to film and edit and all that kind of stuff. Everything's been thrown out the window at this point, and I just kind of work until it's done. But that's just how things go towards the end of a mock series. You basically just gotta do what you gotta do to get everything done. As far as next week goes, I'm gonna continue to crank away on the good old Senate building, hopefully getting close to the point where I can start designing the rounded roof around the top, and I'm also going to be finishing all the rest of the steps. I got all the parts in this week for that, but I was just so focused on getting everything figured out with the Senate building, I didn't want to divide my focus too much, and I figured that's something I could easily do next week. All that being said, that wraps up this update. Thank you guys so much for your feedback, your comments, your support. I really appreciate it, and I will catch you guys in the next video, but until then, happy building.